Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Agnanatimirandasya Gyananjana Salakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha. Sri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kada Mahyam Dadati Swapadantikam. Vandeham Sri Guru Sri Yutapata Sri Gurun Vaishnavamscha. Sri Rupam Sagrajatam Saganaragunatanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Sri Visakanvitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dina Bando Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gourangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrisabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhupya eva cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Namam Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pristaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvisesha Shunyavadi Pashatarishtarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Kadadar Srivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Vibo Hare Krishna Gyani Prabhu, please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Shri Prabhupada.
Hare Krishna, Swami Prabhu. Please accept my humble obeisances. All glory Shri Prabhupada.
Okay, Prabhu, you can read the first text. Haribo.
Okay, thank you. Tatchitram yachat yadiricha yad vikari yatascha yat sachayo yat bhavascha tat samasena me shrinu. Wait. Yes. Yadrit as it is. Cha also. Yat what is. Vikari changes. Yata from which. Cha also. Yat one. Sa I. Cha also. Ya one. Yat which. Prabhavaha. Cha influence also. That Samasena in detail. Me from me Shrinu understand. Translation. Now please hear my brief description of this field of activity and how it is constituted. What its change are, whence it is produced, who that knower of the field of activities is, and what its influences how. Purport. The Lord is describing the field of activities and the knower of the field of activities in their constitutional position. One has to know how this body is constituted, the material of which this body is made, under whose control this body is working, how the changes are taking place, wherefrom the changes are coming, what the causes are, what the reasons are, what the ultimate goal of the individual is, and what the actual form of the individual soul is. One should also know the distinctions between the individual living soul and the supersoul, the different influences, their potentials, etc. One just has to understand this Bhagavad Gita directly from the descriptions given by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and all this will be clarified but one should be careful not to consider the Supreme Personality of Godhead in everybody and individual soul to be the Jiva. This is something like equalizing the potent and the impotent. Ishibir Bahuda Gitam Chandobir Vividai Plikta Brahma Sutra Padaischaiva Etumabir Vinishchitai Rishibhi by the wise sages. Bahuda in many ways. Gitam described. Chandobihi Vedic hymns. Vividahi in various. Pritak variously. Brahma Sutra the Vedanta. Padai aphorism. Cha also Eva certainly. Hetu Mabihi with cause and effect. Vinishchitai ascertained. Translation. That knowledge of the field of activities and the knower of activities is described by various sages in various Vedic writings, especially in the Vedanta Sutra, and is presented with all reasoning as to cause and effect. Purport. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, is the highest authority in explaining this knowledge. Still, as a matter of course, learned scholars and standard authorities always give evidence from previous authorities. Krishna is explaining this most controversial point regarding the duality and non-duality of the soul and the supersoul by referring the scriptures, the Vedanta, which are accepted as authority. First, he says, this is according to different sages. As far as the sages are concerned, beside himself, Vyasadeva, the author of the Vedanta Sutra, is a great sage. And in the Vedanta Sutra, duality is perfectly explained. And Vyasadeva, father, Shalam, was also a great sage, and he writes in his book of religiosity, Aham Tvam Cha Antaye. We, you, I, and various other living entities are all transcendental. Although in material bodies, we are fallen into the way of three modes of material nature according to our different karma. As such, some are of higher levels and some are in lower nature. The higher and lower natures exist due to ignorance and are being manifested in an infinite number of living entities. But the supersoul, which is inviolable, is uncontaminated by the three qualities of nature and is transcendental. Similarly, in the original Vedas, a distinction between the soul, the supersoul, and the body is made. Especially in the Katha Upanishad, there is a manifestation of the Supreme Lord's energy known as Anamaya, by which one depends simply upon food for existence. This is a materialistic realization of the Supreme. Then there is Prana Maya. This, this means that after realizing the Supreme Absolute Truth in foodstuff, one can realize the Absolute Truth in the living symptoms or life forms. In Jnanamaya, the living symptoms develop to the point of thinking, feeling, and willing. Then there is Brahma, realization, and the realization called Vijnanamaya, by which the living entity's mind and life symptoms are distinguished from the living entity in himself. The next and the supreme stage is Anandamaya, realization of the all blissful nature. Thus, there are 5 stages of Brahman realization, which is called Brahma Pucham. Out of this, the first 3, Anamaya, Pranamaya, and Jnanamaya, involve the fields of activities of the living entity. Transcendental to all these fields and activities is the Supreme Lord, who is called Anandamaya. In the Vedanta Sutra also, the Supreme is called Anandamayo, Vyasat. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is by nature full of joy, and to enjoy the transcendental bliss, he expands into Jnanamaya, Pranamaya, Jnanamaya, and Anan, Anan, Anamaya. In this field of activities, the living entity is considered to be enjoyer, and different from him is Anandamaya. That means that if the living entities decide to enjoy in dovetailing himself with the Anandamaya, then he becomes perfect. This is the real pictures of the Supreme Lord as supreme knower of activity, the living entity as subordinate knower, and the nature of the field of activities. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Prabhu.
There's a lot in this verse to
Yes, Prabhu.
discuss about, but don't have much time now. This chapter is technically very.
Yes, Prabhu. It's very technical.
Yeah. Thank you, Alibo.
I've read this 4 times at least, but I don't remember anything.
But you
This
know,
purport is very difficult actually. This purport is very philosophical.
Yes, Prabhu.
yes,
It's
but
talking about anything.
I think the French version is more difficult to understand.
Yeah. Yes, definitely.
Yeah. I think it's very hard to understand actually, because I read the French version, and I think the this version is more uh, logical. Yeah, it's
Prabhu.
more.
It's
Yeah,
same with the
French
Finnish.
version. Yeah. I don't know how they translate this, because there are words in French, they are so hard to understand.
Yeah, same with Finnish
Mm.
language. It sounds like some Christian book. I'm always thinking, what language?
Yeah, yeah, yes. So I think I must improve my English so I can read the original, because so it's so the- I don't know how to say that. Mm. It's more logical actually.
Yes, Prabhu.
The word, and yeah, it's more understandable and easy to understand. Yeah, it's true.
Yes,
Because
Prabhu.
French version
Sometimes,
is very
sometimes
hard.
when I don't
Mm.
know even the word, just by hearing, I get some image of what is being said. Sometimes I don't even know clearly what the word means, but the sound of the word somehow it brings. I don't know. Prabhupada makes you understand it when it's given directly.
Yeah. And I realized this by reading in this session. Um, it becomes more clear,
Yes,
than the
Prabhu.
French version. Yeah,
Yeah.
and I think I hear before that they say Prabhupada spiritualize English
Yes,
language.
Prabhu. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think if you read English um, spoken by Prabhupada, it's different. It's
Yes, Prabhu.
Actually, you know, Prabhuji, like this one term is called demigod. Demigod actually introduced by Prabhupada, because in English there is no proper term for explaining how you explaining devata. Devata, we call it devata. Devata means demigod,
Okay.
means they are not supreme god. So
Yeah,
Prabhupada ji
yeah.
introduced it.
Yes, Prabhu.
So
There is many words like this, like super soul. Who knows what is super soul?
yes,
And there is many
Yes,
words
true,
like
it's
true.
like someday ago I reading some verse from Prabhupada's Bhagavad Gita. There is a term called spiritual emancipation, something like that.
yes, Prabhu.
So I search, what is this emancipation? I go to Google and type
Yes,
and
Prabhu.
see.
Yesterday also happened to me. I learned a new word when I was reading Bhagavatam. I was thinking, is this mistake or is this really a word? And I googled and it's a real word, and I was thinking like, wow. And today I was reading in Bhagavatam. There is this word machine gun. It was explained in the Bhagavatam. I was thinking, wow, they know everything. They know even this. The word machine gun was there in Sanskrit and it was translated. And I was thinking, oh, this is not a new technology or anything. They had machine guns
No, no.
always.
Actually, there are more advanced
Yeah.
technology in the Bhagavatam,
Yes,
actually.
Prabhu.
Yeah. Thank you very
Thank you.
much for it.
Thank you, Prabhu. Jai Shri Prabhupada. Okay, next one. महाभूतन् अहङ्कारो बुद्धिरव्यक्तमेव च इन्द्रियाणि दशैकं च पञ्चचेन्द्रियगोचरा इच्छा द्वेषः सुखं दुःखं सङ्गातश्चेतनधृति एतत् क्षेत्रं समासेन साविकारम् उदाहृतम् Mahabhutani, great elements, ahankara, false ego, buddhi, intelligence, avyaktam, the manifested, eva, certainly, cha also, indriyani, senses, dasha, ekam, 11, cha also, pancha, 5, cha also, indriya, kochara, objects of the senses, ichha, desires, devesha, hatred, Sukham happiness, dukham distress, sangata, sangataha, they aggregate, chetana living symptoms, dhriti conviction, etadaldis kshetram fields of activities, samasena, in summary savikaram, interaction, udaratam, exemplified. Hmm. Also this supreme personality of Godhead, this Godhead word, there was before there was no meaning for Godhead word. But when you hear word Godhead, you instantly understand that it's the head of all the gods. It's the supreme God.
Yes, yes, it's also Prabhupada ji introduced, I
Yes,
think.
Prabhu. Translation. The five great elements, false ego, intelligence, the unmanifested, the 10 senses, the mind, the five sense objects, desire, hatred, happiness, distress, the aggregate, the life symptoms, and convictions, all these are considered in summary to be the field of activities and its interactions. Yes, I'm always thinking when I read about this that all of this summary of the field of activities, I always try to think that when will come the day when I can explain this by memory, because Tadvavit Prabhu can tell you one by one all these five sense objects, all this. He can just now he can tell you all this, but I couldn't be able to remember all these parts. The 10 senses.
Roji, this five sense object means what? This what is smell, taste, all these things, right? What this five sense object means?
Yeah, the I think it's explained in the purport now. But yeah,
Yes,
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 yes.
I think like all this smell, taste, beautiful sight, or some seeing or something, like
yeah,
all five knowledge acquiring senses,
yeah.
and
The five sense
with them,
objects are taste, form, sound.
yes, taste, form, sound, yeah,
Touch,
smell, I think,
Yeah,
yeah,
smell. What is the fifth?
Touch, it is the four S: smell, sound, then taste, touch, four, and
Yeah, form. Yeah, touch was also
two,
one.
two S, two T, and and one more like that. So I remember like that.
Yes,
It
Prabhu.
is taste, touch, smell, sound, and form. F.
Yeah, form.
That is the five.
Yes,
No,
Prabhu.
no, no. Sight. Not the. It is sight. I think so. Sight, sound, smell, taste, and touch. Means form we are able to see form because of sight. Sight is a sense, means from the eyes we can say. So it
Yes,
is five.
yeah, but here it said warm.
Yes, yes,
Yeah,
yes.
warm.
Yes.
It's smell, taste, warmth,
It is
touch, and
warmth,
sound.
touch, and sound. Okay.
Very well, let's read the purport. From all the authoritative statements of the great sages, the Vedic hymns, and the aphorisms of the Vedanta Sutra, the components of this world are earth, water, fire, and ether. These are the five great elements, Mahabhuta. Then there are false ego, intelligence, and the unmanifested stage of the three modes of nature. False ego. Does this mean mind? The unmanifested state of the three modes of nature. Yeah, I think it's mind, because false ego, intelligence, and mind.
Why is it unmanifested? I don't understand. Stage. What?
Because the
These
mind,
are like subtle form, I
yeah,
think.
It
it's
is
double.
subtle and gross. They are the subtle and means we cannot see false ego,
Yeah.
intelligence, and mind. So it is subtle.
Yes, Prabhu. Then there are five senses for acquiring knowledge: the eyes, ears, nose, tongue, and touch. This is what the Western philosophy knows as the senses. When you ask what is a sense, they explain these only. They don't know about the working senses. Then five working senses: voice, legs, hands, the anus, and the genitals. Then about the senses, there is mind, which is within and which can be called the sense within. Hmm. Therefore, including the mind, there are 11 senses altogether. Then there are the five objects of the senses: smell, taste, warmth, touch, and sound. But is it really warmth? Is that
It should be sight and form, because I
yeah,
think that warmth has many things. Sight is there, light is there, form is there, because everything is eyes. We can say eyes see the light and sight, and we can say warmth is the perception, the skin part.
yeah.
So I think so like that means,
Yes, brother.
because sight also is a like function of the eyes we can say,
Yeah.
and that is because of the light, that that light, refracted light we can say from the cornea we can say.
Yes, Prabhu. Now, the aggregate of these 24 elements is called the field of activity. If one makes an analytical study of these 24 subjects, then he can very well understand the field of activity. Then there is desire, hatred, pleasure, and pain, which are interactions, representations of the five great elements in the gross body. The living symptoms represented by consciousness and conviction are the manifestation of the subtle body, mind, ego, and intelligence. These subtle elements are included within the field of activities. The five great elements are a gross representation of the subtle false ego. They are representation in the material conception. Consciousness is represented by intelligence, of which the unmanifested stage is the three modes of material nature. The unmanifested three modes of material nature is called pradhana. One who desires to know the 24 elements in detail along with their interactions should study the philosophy in more detail. In Bhagavad Gita, a summary only is given. The body is the representation of all these factors, and there are changes of the body, which are 6 in number. The body is born, it grows, it stays, it produces byproducts, then begins to decay, and at the last stage it vanishes. Therefore, the field is not permanent material thing. However, the kshetragyana, the knower of the field, is proprietor. Its proprietor is different. Very well. Now it's a really long verse.
Can I read what? That I like to read Sanskrit. I had
Yes.
100 marks Sanskrit in school.
Yes, Prabhu, you can read. Very well.
Okay, Hare Krishna. I like to read Sanskrit, original Sanskrit, not the English one. The
Yes,
original Sanskrit. Yes, this above. Okay. अमानित्व मदम्भित्व महिंसा शान्तिरार्जवम् आचार्यपासनं शौचं स्थैर्यमात्मविनिग्रहः इन्द्रियार्थेषु इन्द्रियार्थेषु वैराग्यं मन अहंकार एव च जन्म मृत्यु जरा व्याधि दुःख दोषनुदर्शनम् असक्ति न भिष्वङ्ग पुत्रदारा गृहादिषु नित्यं च समचित्तत्वं मिष्टानिष्टोपपत्तिषु मयि चानन्ययोगेन भक्तिरव्यभिचारिणी विविक्तदेशसेवित्व मरति जर्न संसदि अध्यात्म ज्ञान नित्यत्वं तत्वज्ञानार्थ दर्शनम् एतज्ज्ञानमिति प्रोक्तम् अज्ञानम् यतदो अन्यथा. Okay, the translation.
very well. But Prabhu, there is word to word.
That one is that is the most important part.
Yes,
Okay, wait,
Prabhu.
I will just on my video. Wait, okay, amanitvam, humility, adhambitvam, pridelessness, ahimsa, non-violence, shantihi, tolerance, arjavam, simplicity, acharyopasanam, approaching a bona fide spiritual master, shaucham, cleanliness, stairyam, steadfastness, vinigraha, control, indriyartheshu, in the matter of the senses, vairagyam, renunciation, ahankaraha, being without false egoism, eva, certainly, cha, also, janmam, birth, mrityu, death, jara, old age, vyadhi, disease, dukkha, distress, dosha, fault, anudarshanam, observing, asaktihi, without attachment, anabhishvangaha, without association, putra, son, dara, wife, uh, grihadishu, home, etc. Nityam, eternal, cha, also, samachittatvam, equilibrium, ishta, desirable, anishtaha, undesirable, upapattishu, having obtained, mai, unto me, cha, also, ananya yogena, by devotional service, bhakti hi, devotion, avibhicharani, constant, unallied, vivikta, solitary, desha, place, sevitvam, aspiring, aratihi, without attachment, jana, people in general, samsadi, mass, adhyatma, pertaining to the self, jnana, knowledge, nityatvam, eternity, tattva jnana, knowledge of the truth, artha, the object, darshanam, philosophy, etad, all this, jnanam, knowledge, iti, thus, proktam, declared, adnanam, ignorance, yad, that which, ataha, from this, anyatha, others. Everything is explained in this verse by Krishna.
Very well.
Great,
So much, Prabhu.
great verse. Okay, the translation is humility, pridelessness, non-violence, tolerance, simplicity, approaching a bona fide spiritual master, cleanliness, steadiness, and self-control, renunciation of the objects of sense gratification, absence of false ego, the perception of the evil of birth, death, old age, and disease, non-attachment of to children, wife, home, and the rest, and even-mindedness amid pleasant and unpleasant events, constant and unalloyed devotion to me, resorting to solitary places, detachment from the general mass of people, accepting the importance of self-realization and philosophical search for the absolute truth. All this I declare to be knowledge, and what is contrary to this is ignorance. Shall I read the purport?
Hare Krishna, yes, Prabhu.
Shall I read the purport?
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Yes, you can read it. Very well.
Yes, purport. Okay, this process of knowledge is sometimes misunderstood by less intelligent men as being the interaction of the field of activity. But actually, this is the real process of knowledge. If one accepts this process, then the possibility of approaching the absolute truth exists. This is not the interaction of the tenfold elements as described before. This is actually the means to get out of it. Of all the descriptions of the process of knowledge, the most important point is described In the first line of the 10th verse, the process of knowledge terminates in unalloyed devotional service to the Lord. So, if one does not approach or is not able to approach the transcendental service of the Lord, then the other 19 items are of no particular value. But if one takes to devotional service in full Krishna consciousness, and the other 19 items automatically develop within him. The principle of accepting a spiritual master, as mentioned in the 7th verse, is essential. Even for one who takes to devotional service, it is most important. Transcendental life begins when one accepts a bona fide spiritual master, the supreme personality of Godhead Sri Krishna. Clearly states here that the process of knowledge is the actual path. Anything speculated beyond this is nonsense. Can any because it is I know this is in the 13th chapter and each and every point is explained by Shailabura. So shall I read everything? It is very big purport. Like shall I read or
Yes,
you are
bro, you
telling
can read. You can read.
anyone else?
Also, if anyone
Very
else
like
can,
I can.
this of 2.5
I
pages.
can. I can read now.
yes, bro.
Hey, I can also read one
Thank
He
chapter
also
or
can
some.
read. You say.
One can read at the same
you.
time.
Thank you. As far as the knowledge outlined here, the items can be analyzed as follows. Humility means that one should not be anxious to have the satisfaction of being honored by others. The material conception of life makes us very eager to receive honor from others. But from the point of view of a man, that he is not this body anything. Honor or dishonor. Uh, pertaining to this body is useless. One should not be hankered after this material dissipation. People are very anxious to be famous for their religion, and consequently, sometimes it is found that without understanding the principles of religion, one enters into some group which is not actually following religious principles, and then wants to advertise ad- advertise himself as a religious mentor. As for actual advancement in spiritual science, one should have a taste to see how far he is progressing. He can judge by these items. Non-violence is generally taken to men not killing or destroying the body, but actually, non-violence means not to put others into distress. People in general are trapped by ignorance in the material concept of life, and they perpetually suffer material pain. So, unless one elevates people to spiritual knowledge, one is practicing violence. One should try his best to distribute real knowledge to the people so that they may become enlightened and leave this material entanglement, that is non-violence. Tolerance means that one should be practiced to bear insult and disorder from others. If one is engaged in the advancement of spiritual knowledge, there will be so many insults and much dishonor from others. This is concepted uh, accepted because material nature is so constituted. Even a boy like Prahlada, who only 5 years old, was engaged in the cultivation of spiritual knowledge, was endangered when his father became an antagonist antagonist antagonistic to his devotion. The father tried to kill him in so many ways, but Prahlad tolerated him. So, for making advancement in spiritual knowledge, there may be many impediments, but we should be tolerant and continue our progress with determination. Simplicity means that without diplomacy, one should be so straightforward that he can disclose the real truth even to an enemy. As for acceptance of the spiritual master, that is essential, because without the instruction of a bona fide spiritual master, one cannot progress in the spiritual sense. One should approach the spiritual master with all humility and offer him all services so that he will be pleased to bestow his blessings upon the disciple, because a bona fide spiritual master is a representative of Krishna. If he bestows any blessings upon his disciple, that will make the disciple immediately advanced. Without the disciples following the regulated principles, or the regulated principles will be easier for one who has served the spiritual master without reservation. Cleanliness is essential for making advancement in spiritual life. There are two kinds of cleanliness, external and internal. External cleanliness means taking a bath, but for eternal cleanliness, one has to think of Krishna always and chant Hare Krishna, but and chant Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. This process cleans the accumulated dust of past karma from the mind. Steadiness means that one should be very determined to make progress in spiritual life. Without such determination, one cannot make tangible progress. And self-control means that one should not accept anything which is detrimental to the path of spiritual progress. One should become accustomed, accom, accustomed to this, and reject anything which is against the path of spiritual progress. This is real renunciation. The cells are so strong that they are always anxious to have sense gratification. One should not cater to these demands which are not necessary. The senses should only be gratified to keep the body fit, so that one can discharge his duty in advancing in spiritual life. The most important and uncontrollable uncontrollable senses is the tongue. If one can control the tongue, then there is a very possibility of controlling the other senses. The function of the tongue is to taste and to vibrate. By by systematic regulation, the tongue should always be engaged in tasting the remnants of foodstuffs offered to Krishna and chanting Hare Krishna. As far as the eyes are concerned, they should not be allowed to see anything but the beautiful form of Krishna. That will control the eyes. Similarly, the ears should be engaged in hearing about Krishna, and the noise is in smelling the flowers offered to Krishna. This is the process of devotion service, and it is understood here that Bhagavad Gita is simply expounding the sense of devotion service. Devotion service is the main and sole objective. Unintelligent commentators on the Gita try to divert the mind of the reader to other subjects, but there is no other subject in Bhagavad Gita but devotion service. False ego means False ego means accepting this body as oneself. When one understands that he is not his body and he is spirit soul, that is real ego. Ego is there. False ego is contaminated, but not real ego. In the Vedic literature, it is said, "Aham Brahmasmi." I am Brahman. I am spirit. This I am. The senses of self also exists in the liberated stage of self-realization. This senses of I am his ego. But when the sense of I am is compliant applied to this false body, it is false ego. When the senses of self is applied to reality, that is real ego. There are some philosophers who says we should give up our ego, but we cannot give up our ego, because ego means identity. Identity, we oath of course oath of course to give up the false identification with the body. One should try to understand the distress of accepting birth, death, old age, and disease. There are descriptions in various Vedic literature of birth. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, the word of the unborn, the child's stay in the womb of the mother, its suffering, etc., are all very graphically described. It should be truly understood that birth is distressful, because we forget how much distress we have suffered within the womb of the mother. We do not make any solution to the reception of birth and death. Similarly, at the time of death, there are all kinds of sufferings, and they are also mentioned in the alternative scriptures. This should be discussed, and as far as disease and old age are concerned, everyone gets practical experience. No one wants to be diseased, and no one wants to be become old, but there is no avoiding this unless we have a pessimistic view of the of the spiritual life, considering the distress of birth, death, old age, and disease. This is there is no impetus for our making advancement in spiritual life. As for detachment from children, wife, and home, it is not meant that one should have no feelings for this. They are natural objects of affection, but when they are not favorable to spiritual progress, then one should not be attached to them. The best process for making the home pleasant is Krishna consciousness. If one is in full Krishna consciousness, he can make his home very happy, because this process of Krishna consciousness is very easy. One need only chant Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Accept the remnants of foodstuffs offered to Krishna. Have some discussions on books like Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam, and engage oneself in deity worship. These four will make one happy. These four will make one happy. One should train the members of his family in this way. Thus, family members can sit down morning and evening and chant together Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. If one can mold his family life in this way to develop Krishna consciousness following these four principles, then there is no need to change from family life to renounce its life. But if it is should be abundant, one must sacrifice everything to realize or serve Krishna, just as Arjuna did. Arjuna did not want to kill his family members, but when he understood that these family members were impediments to his Krishna realization, he accepted the instruction of Krishna and fought and killed them. In all cases, one should be detached from the happiness and distressed of family life, because in this world one can never be fully happy or fully miserable. Happiness and distress are concomitant factors of material life. One should learn to tolerate, as advised in Bhagavad Gita. One can never restrict the coming and going of happiness and distress. So one should be detached from the materialist way of life and be automatically equipoised in both cases. Generally, when we get something uh, desirable, we are very happy, and when we get something undesirable, we are distressed. But if we are actually in the spiritual position, these things will not agitate us. To reach the stage, we have to practice unbreakable devotion service to Krishna without deviation. Means engaging oneself in the nine process of devotion service: chanting, hearing, worshipping, offering respect, etc., as described in the last verse of the ninth chapter. That process should be followed. Naturally, one is adapted to the uh, unspiritual way of life, he will not want to mix with materialistic men. That would go against his grain. One may test himself by seeing how far he is inclined to live in a solitary place without unwanted association. Naturally, a devotee has no taste for un- unnecessary sporting or cinema going and enjoying some social function because he understands that these are simply a waste of time. There are many research scholars and philosophers who study sex life or some other subjects, but according to Bhagavad Gita, such research work and philosophical speculation have no value. That is more or less nonsensical. According to Bhagavad Gita, one should make research by philosophical discretion into the nature of the soul. One should make research to understand with what the self is concerned that is recommended here. As far as self-realization is concerned, it is clearly stated here that bhakti yoga is especially practical. As soon as there is a question of devotion, we must consider the relationship with the super soul and the individual soul. The individual soul and the super soul cannot be one, at least not in bhakti conception, the devotional conception of life. This service of the individual soul to the supreme soul cannot be one, at least not in the bhakti conception, the devotional conception of life. This service of the individual soul to the supreme soul is eternal, nityam, as is clearly stated. So bhakti or devotional service is eternal. One should be established in that philosophical conviction. Otherwise, it is only a waste of time, ignorance. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, this is explained. Vadanti tatvata vidas tatvatam yajnanam advayam. Those who are actually knowers of the absolute truth knows, know that the self is realized in three different phases as Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan. Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavatam 1.2 and 11. Bhagavan is the last word in the realization of the absolute truth. Therefore, one should reach up to that platform of understanding the Supreme Personality of Godhead and those engaged in the service of the Lord. That is perfection of knowledge. Being from practicing humility to the point of realization of the absolute personality of Godhead. This process is just like strength staircase beginning from the ground floor up to the top floor. Now on this staircase there are so many people who have reached the first floor, the second or third floor, etc. But unless one reaches to the top floor, which is the understanding of Krishna, he is at a lower stage of knowledge. If anyone wants to compete with God and at the same time make advancement in spiritual life, he will be frustrated. It is clearly stated that without humility, understanding is harmful. To think oneself God is most puffed up, although the living entity is also being kicked by the stringent laws of material nature, still he thinks because of ignorance. One should be humble and know that he is subordinate to the Supreme Lord due to rebellion against the Supreme Lord. One becomes subordinate to material nature. One must know and be convinced of this truth.
Haribol. Thank you so much, Prabhu.
Okay, thank you so much, Prabhu. Who wants to continue? Very nice information follow.
Yes, Prabhu. Okay, Haribol. Now we need to read Sikshastakam prayers, I think. Cheto darpanamarjanam bhavamaha. Tavagninirvapanam Shreyah Kairavachandrika Vitaranam Vidyavadu Jeevanam Anandam Buddhivardhanam Pratipadam Purnamritasvadanam Sarvatma Snapanam Param Vijayate Sri Krishna Sankirtanam.
नामनाम आकारी बहुधा निजो सर्वशक्ति तत्राप्रिता नियमित शरणेन नाकाला एतदृशी तव कृपा भगवान् ममापि दुर्दैवम् ईदृशम् इहा जानि ननुराग्रहे
तृणादपि सुनीचे न तरोरपि सहिष्णुना अमानिमान्देन कीर्तनीय सदा हरि न धनं न जनं न सुन्दरी न कविता न जगदीश कामये मम जन्मनि जन्मनीश्वरे भवता भक्तिरहितुकी त्वयि अयि नन्द तनुज किङ्करं पतितं मां विषमे भवाम्बुधौ कृपया तव पादपङ्कजं स्थितधूलिसदृशं विचिन्त्य नयनं गलदश्रुधारया वदनं गद्गदहृदया गिरा पुलकैरनिचितं वपुः कदा तव ग्रहणे भविष्यति युगायितम् अनिमेषेण चक्षुषा प्रावृषायितं शून्यायितं जगत् सर्वं गोविन्दविरहेण मे आशिष्टस्य वा पादरतां विनष्टु माम् अदर्शनाम्ना महतां करोतु वा यथा तथा वा विदधातु लम्पटो मत्प्राणस्तु स एव नापरः
Haribol.
then the Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare.
Okay,
Thank you very much.
thank you so much.
Haribol.
Okay, then translation. 1. Glory to the Sri Krishna Sankirtan, which cleanses the heart of all the dust accumulated for years and extinguishes the fire of conditional life of repeated birth and death. This Sankirtan movement is the prime benediction for humanity at large because it spreads the rays of the benediction moon. It is the life of all transcendental knowledge. It increases the ocean of transcendental bliss and it enables us to fully taste the nectar for which we are always anxious.
O my Lord, your holy name alone can render all benediction to living beings, and thus you have hundreds and millions of names like Krishna and Govinda. In these transcendental names, you have invest all your transcendental energies. There are not even hard and fast rules for chanting these names. O my Lord, out of kindness you enable us to easily approach you by your holy names. But I am so unfortunate that I have no attraction for them.
One should chant the holy.
One should chant the
Please
holy
continue.
name of the Lord in a humble state of mind, thinking oneself lower than the straw in the street. One should be more tolerant than a tree, devoid of all sense of false prestige, and should be ready to offer all respect to others. In such a state of mind, one can chant the holy name of the Lord constantly.
O Almighty Lord, I have no disease, have led well found life, number of followers. I only want your causeless devotion, service, birth after birth.
O son of Maharaj Nanda, I am your eternal servitor, yet somehow or other I have fallen into the ocean of birth and death. Please pick me up from this ocean of death and place me as one of the atoms at your lotus feet.
O my
O
Lord,
my
when will my eyes be decorated with tears of love, flowing constantly when I chant your holy name? When will my voice choke up, and when will the hairs of my body stand on end at the reaction, on recitation of your name?
O Govinda, feeling your separation, some considering a moment to be like 12 years or more, tears are flowing from my eyes like torrents of rain, and I'm feeling all vacant in the world in your absence.
I know
I
no one but Krishna has my love. Continue, Prabhu. Please continue.
I know no one but Krishna as my Lord, and he shall remain so even if he handles me roughly by his embrace or makes me broken-hearted by not being present before me. He is completely free to do anything and everything, for he is always my worshipful Lord unconditionally.
Haribol, Sri Siksastakam Ki Jai.
Joy.
Jai, Jai.
Jai.
Okay, then the 10 offenses. First
Jai.
offense. To blaspheme the devotees who have dedicated their life for propagating the holy name of the Lord.
Number 2, to consider the names of demigods like Lord Shiva or Lord Brahma to be equal to or independent of the name of Lord Vishnu.
Number 3, to disobey the orders of the spiritual master. Number 4, to blaspheme the Vedic scriptures or scriptures in pursuance of the Vedic version.
Number
Can I
5,
read?
to consider the glories of chanting Hare Krishna to be an imagination.
Number 6, to give some interpretations to the holy name of the Lord.
Number 7, to commit sinful activities on the strength of the holy name. To
Number 8,
consider the
okay. To consider
bro,
the
go on.
chanting. Okay, okay.
Go on.
To consider the chanting of Hare Krishna Mahamantra as one of the auspicious ritualistic activities which are offered in the Vedas as fruitive activities, Karma Kanda. Ninth, to instruct a faithless person about the glories of the holy name.
Number 10, to not have complete faith in the chanting of the holy name and to maintain material attachments even after understanding so many instructions on this matter. It is also an offense to be inattentive while chanting. Every devotee who claims to be Vaishnava must guard against these offenses in order to quickly achieve the desired success, Krishna Prema. Panchakalpatarupyascha
Vaishnaveभ्यो नमो नमः।
पंचतत्व की
जय
जय,
श्री
श्री कृष्ण
जय
चैतन्य महाप्रभु नित्यानंद की जय, श्रीला प्रभुपाद की जय, निताई गौर
जय
प्रेम हरि
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 बोल।
बोल।